Welcome back to the Good Leader Podcast. I'm your host, John Martinez, and this is my co-host, Dr. Dave Miller. And today we're going to be talking about rites of passage. Miguel, go ahead and throw in the intro right there. So the whole this whole topic with rites of passage kind of came up because we've been the last month of January. We talked about what was it, Dave? We talked about the new year. Why is it hard for people? Discipline and discipline over motivation, because motivation kind of always fades out. And then last week we talked about your networking and the people around you. So today we're talking about just rites of passage for men and how this kind of came up, at least for in my mind, is something for us to talk about. Was I was watching the Mulligan Brothers. I don't know if you've ever seen that. They're like a motivational kind of YouTube channel.
I don't think I've specifically seen them.
Yeah, they do a lot of he does a lot of little videos, but there's a guy there from Delta Force on there. And what I thought was interesting about what he talked about was, for anyone that knows about the military stuff, Delta Force, the highest tier you can go. You can't go higher than them. And he was talking about that when he left the unit after 20 years, because he had pretty much been there, I think, the majority of his career, how he went to not working out for years. He was struggling with drinking. He had been I think he talks about the multiple divorces he had during his career. He was directly involved in the Black Hawk Down in Somalia and all this stuff. So what I thought about that was man, if a guy who's been through all that can say, hey, I hit a point where I was now separated from my unit. I didn't have the desire to work out. He even said the same thing, I'm going to start today, but it wouldn't. And drinking, I'm it kind of means I think any man is susceptible to that if they start losing their purpose and their way.
I think it comes down to some form of identity crisis.
Yes.
When you've moved from one world that you've known for so long and just get thrust into another one that you're not even prepared for, yep. It tends to really kind of shake your foundations.
Yeah, and that's what I thought was a very interesting thing, what he talked about. And I think he came to the point by the end of the podcast where where we're kind of telling guys is that balance between being who you are and doing hard shit, but that shouldn't override everything else, like having a family, having, people that care about you. It can't be just all that geared towards a job, because when that goes away, then you kind of end up with nothing. And that's what he kind of talks about, just that it's just that kind of having that balance, where I don't think maybe when we were growing up that was taught to us, because I don't think our parents really knew that. I think they was always just work hard,
Yeah.
work, which is right. It's right to work hard, but it's but also what are you working towards?
Yeah. Again, growing up, my day and age, it wasn't a lot of kind of motivational heart to heart sort of speaking, it's we're son, you're not doing so well in school, maybe we can sit down and we can work this out or whatever. It's more like somebody coming in the room and scream at you, study, and you're like, all right, I homework. Guess whatever. Yeah. So.
We have a special guest right now. Look but no, I agree. It's always I think our parents, and I don't think it was because they didn't care. A lot of people, I think, sometimes have these grudges against their parents, oh, my parents didn't teach me that, or they didn't. And I think a lot of it was they didn't probably know. You know what I mean? If you can't. What does it say? You can't teach what you don't know. And I think sometimes that in that generation, I feel. From what I saw was my dad's dad was very much just work, and that was about it. And I saw my dad where he was kind of the same way, but I think he was also trying to do better. And I think for them, we get to our generation where we kind of are trying to do better. That's why we even have the podcast where we talk about it, which you could never picture our dads and our grandpas sitting there talking about stuff like that. It just wasn't even a viable thing back then, I don't think. And they probably really weren't open to doing it.
Well, I think also there's the factor that with the progression of our society over the years, some things that move so fast, or where it's just the type of stuff that you need to know to make it by on a day-to-day has changed so much that the people that come before you, they don't really know too much about it. And so they can't really communicate it to you. Well, when you get like kind of stuck in a loop of like, oh, well, I need to go to school, I need to do this, I need these basic things. And you're like, why? Explain it to me, and then somebody can't come up with an adequate explanation. It kind of hits, you run into a roadblock.
Yeah. No, I think it's almost like you said. It's like maybe it's like it's good that we have so much technology and other things, but it's also made things overly complicated. It used to be simple. Like if you wanted to have a conversation with someone, it was like you would call their house, and if they didn't answer their phone, it's because they weren't there for the most part, because there's no other way to get a hold of them. Yeah. Now it's like we have constant access to all this information, and like you said, it can become where it's like it feels like too much.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because if you think about the start of human society, I mean, it was all basic. I mean, it was all survival.
Grunts.
So you hunting, gathering, preparing the skins for the winter, it just very basic survival needs. Yeah. Now you have so many choices out there that it's hard to really put together a package of, this is what you need to know to go out in the world and make it, my son.
They want organic or free range chicken.
Right.
Those are the new. You know what I mean? Yeah. Said it before. It's like whatever came across your path. You had to hunt. Had to hunt it and eat it.
Is it GMOs? Is it grass fed? What is going on here? What does that mean?
Do you think society stopped clearly marking the transition for men? Like, is there any clear transition you think for young men at this point where they are like, I'm a man, or everyone just has to make up their own shit pretty much?
I mean, for so many paths that you can go down to be a functional member of society anymore. Yeah. I mean, the bar can be different for for different people. However, I mean, I know this is going to piss some people off, but I say roughly around like the time when feminism came about, we started taking away specific gendered roles, and just become a taboo subject now, and where it's like, this whole gender role thing. I mean, this is all a societal construct. It's just made up in the collective consciousness of people that exist now, and it's like, you're totally throwing out all of human existence as a data collection point. Yeah. You can't do that. There are some things that just function better depending on the gender of the person. And when you start taking that away from men, it says that women would be just as good as a man, at everything they do, well, that's not necessarily true. Yeah. Just like a man can't actually functionally be like a woman, or take on the roles that she has.
Unless you think you're a woman, then he can be one.
Now we're going down a whole different rabbit hole, man. What you think, I don't really care. What the fact is,
No, I get what you mean. I do get that, because I was having a conversation with someone about that the other day, where they're kind of going, because one of the big news topics is because the whole Epstein list came out, and they're like, again with the whole, they started delving into Trump's on there, and it's like, okay, but what is he doing? Is there any evidence trying he's doing anything, or he's just on there because you guys have been saying that forever, right? And I kind of went into the whole thing about, how men kind of can be accused, and we're pretty much guilty until proven innocent. And that's not always the same for girls. And I kind of went back to when I was a police officer, and the term used to be for us was that they would say we were victim blamers. If someone accused someone of doing something and they were from the female side and it was found to not have happened, and they would turn it back and say, well, there's no consequences for them, even though they may have ruined this guy's life or did anything like that. And I said, it's like a double standard that's being kind of created. And for some people that have never seen that, which I don't know how they wouldn't, it's kind of, I don't think they see that the plight that has for men. And I think that's where you get now, like where you talk about the feminism thing, and where it's like you have a lot of men that don't want to engage with women as much anymore, not because they don't want to, but because they don't want to be deemed as being whatever toxic masculinity or overly aggressive, or that they're not, she may not like them. And it kind of just hurts. I think it just hurts not just the guy, but it hurts also the girls, because in the end, it's like they're asking for something that sometimes they don't I don't think to see the long-term consequences of that. You know what I mean? I said, as guys, and I was explaining to someone, says, guys, we growing up, we're used to getting, shot down. You have to go take your shot and take your chances, and it just is what it is. Where it's not always the same for females, and people can try to say it is, but it's like we know as guys know it's not. You know what I mean? Like it's a lot. There's a different kind of playbook for us, and I think we accept it for the most part. I think when people try to make it like it's not like that, that's just kind of being unrealistic, and then you kind of just goes into a lot of what you see now, the problem with men, where they kind of seem to be losing their way because of that, because now they're like, okay, well, if I'm too much of a man, then the girls don't like it. If I'm not enough of a man, then guys don't don't want me around that, or we're looking at them like, why are you acting like that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there has to be kind of a counter, some kind of balance that has to come. It has. Hopefully, we can course correct ourselves and fix it.
Well, there's also kind of two sides of it, and I think it's some things that people don't really say out loud anymore, but men still, I mean, they bear the responsibility of, like you say, of doing all like the dirty work, to being, the war fighters, the being the construction labor, the oil rigs, the deep sea fishermen, all these dangerous sort of tasks, that actually keeps a society flowing.
Yeah.
But then once something goes wrong, we also carry all the responsibility for that. We get all the blame. And it's like, come on, you're sticking us in like a no-win situation.
Yeah.
But that there is a purpose in that, and sometimes you just have to grin and bear through like all the heat that you might take, but you just know that you do have a purpose and you have to, carry the weight.
Yeah, I think definitely. And it just comes back to, I remember I was maybe 19 when we got in the Army, and they had this when they were barely starting to bring females into the infantry, because I don't know if there's how many females are in the Army infantry right now. I still don't think it's a lot, but when I was there was none. It was no females in Army infantry. So I remember them having a conversation with us where they basically asked us, how did we feel about it? And I think guys, for the most part, were like, well, as long as they can do everything that we're doing. And that came back to where they can't do everything that we're doing. The weight, and it has nothing to do with them not wanting to do the job. They just couldn't carry the weight of the rucks or things that we had to do. And that seemed to be like more of the issue. And I think that's still the issue. That's why there's not a lot of females in there. And they kind of told us something that was interesting. They said, America, I don't know about other countries, but they said America has always been more comfortable with their sons dying than their daughters. That's good. And it's kind of, you're like, well, yeah, that is kind of correct. You know what I mean? Well, like getting guys, we kind of accept that, and I think it's not a bad thing. I don't want to say it's a noble trait, but I think we understand that it's something that we kind of accept the roles as being men and protectors. That, hey, this is something can happen to us, and I think for the most part, that's where when you see a lot of I don't say not influencer, but sometimes you see people really bashing men and things like that. I don't like that, because we don't build our platform off of bashing women, and I see a lot of guys that don't. I mean, some guys do, but for the most part, I don't really see too much of that. And I think that's where it's kind of like, well, if we were saying those same things, we would be looked at as like misogynist pigs, and I was watching it. So it was just a funny reel, but it was something like Family Feud. And they're like, oh, some of the things that you would do to your spouse if they were asleep. And the woman said the first thing was like, I would hit them. And a lot of the comments, and it was a funny, and she was joking, but in a lot of the comments, they said, imagine a guy saying that, like, you know what I mean?
The double standard. Yeah.
I'd punch her while she's asleep.
Right.
Like, you would get like he's always an abuser.
Exactly. Yeah. You see, but that goes to where it's like, you get like the blame for everything that goes wrong. However, you're expected to carry the load at all times. So it's a tough thing to balance.
Yes, sir.
And I think you touched on something when you said the protect part. I think that is actually a fundamental wiring of men, is that you do actually have a need to be a protector and a provider. It's just hardwired in the men. Mm-hmm. These days, it's not so simple as like you're going out, bow and arrow, taking down like the mammoth, dragging it back to camp, carving it, that
Look what I did.
That sort of stuff, Now it's like there's so many aspects to society, so many paths to go down that it's making society run. Now it's like, that protector and provider it has to be redefined sometimes, for whatever a man chooses he's going to go down. But if he can't find that purpose, I mean, there's nothing more tragic than a man who feels useless.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Can a man just decide he's a man, or does he require something external? Do you know what point that you felt like you're like, I'm a fucking man now?
There's like a lot of small points that you can pick out, and it's that moment when it's like, well, left to my own devices. Man, I can do this, or I can do that, or I can figure it out. I'm going to be able to make it, so I have the basic skills to just be able to carve a path, so whether it be, your dad making you do your first oil change, you learn how to change a tire, something like that, or you get taught to hunt, you get taught to grow your own food, build a house, stuff like, whatever it may be. It's when you get that sense, it's like, you know what, I can do this, I don't have to rely on somebody else. That's a marker of becoming a man or being a man.
No, I agree. Yeah, I think for me, I was thinking about that too, because when I wrote that question, I was like, like what? I don't know if it was just one thing. I remember, I think for me, it was a combination of things. I think it was once I graduated high school, and then going to the military, then I kind of knew I was on my own because I had no one, I could call my parents, but they couldn't get me out of anything that was going on. And then once I got married, it was kind of like build-ups to little things. If I had to say it was like 3 things, I would say for me it was like going to the military, getting married, and then when my daughter was born. I think because at those points, those are all like responsibility things that there was no way for me to get out of them. Like I had to do them. I think when you feel committed to doing something and the responsibilities on you, I think that's when you start feeling like a man. Yeah. I think it's like almost like even a minor, like, hey, I got your first job, and hey, you need to go there after school, and that could start making, that's slowly the responsibilities of becoming a man. Like it's hey, if you don't go to work and you're late to work, that's your own fault.
It's like you when you start playing a role where like you feel like you're actually moving the ball downfield, so you're actually contributing to something, you're making something happen, you're actually doing the movements in order to advance.
And I think you kind of already touched on the other question I had with it when I said, what happens when no one tells a man you're needed now? And I think that goes back to, like you said, feeling like useless.
Feeling useless.
Yeah, and for me, I think it's a cycle. And I try to explain this to people sometimes about guys, about why it's important for certain things like working out in your relationships and your job. So this is just my always thought process behind it, right? If you have a guy that is unhappy with his job and then he doesn't work out, and then he's not performing the best in his relationship because he's physically, he's unhappy where he's at in his life. He's physically not fit. So now this crosses over into his relationship. The girl he's with, his wife, his girlfriend, whatever, can start losing, I don't want to say respect for him, but kind of like, hey, now you're fucking down in the dumps. You know what I mean? Yeah. And, some girls may try to help you out of that, but it's not that I don't think girls shouldn't help you out of that. But you can only expect your partner to do that for you for so long. Like at some point you also have to try to like get up yourself. Yeah. And I think that starts like a vicious cycle for guys where it's like, hey, if you don't like your job or what you're doing, then look for something else. If you don't like the way you physically are fit, then do that. And then also, go after your goals. And there's a book called The Dangerous Gentleman by Victor Marx. He's actually running for the governor of Colorado.
I like Victor Marx. He's good.
Yeah. And he has one in there where he says, and this I agree with this 100%. He says a man is supposed to go after their purpose, and that's what makes them attractive to women. And women are attracted to the man because he goes after their purpose. He's attracted to the woman, but she is not his full purpose. Because when it kind of creates that energy that attracts her to him, because she knows that he's going after what he's doing and she wants to support him, and he supports her also the same whatever she's doing. But that's what makes her attracted to him, that there's a purpose that he's trying to go after, and it's like almost like not cat and mouse, but that it gives that attraction off. Where if the guy is just focused on her and her singular, her happiness, it's almost like, okay, well, what are you doing?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
I don't agree with that. Happy. What is it? Happy wife, happy life. I hate that quote. I hate that shit. Like that's.
I mean, there's something to be said for elements of chivalry and stuff like that. You want to treat treat your woman as if she's a privilege to be earned every day.
Yeah.
But the thing, you do have to be focused on your own drive. What you're aimed at. That's actually going to be your primary focus.
Yeah,
because the woman doesn't want to feel like you're just going to crumble without her,
Yeah.
because that doesn't help her out at all. She's going to know that it's like, no matter what, you're going this direction. I want to tag along. I mean, because you're going to make it happen.
Yeah. No, that's why I think that one is more about if you're both happy, then you can both kind of pursue something together rather than it's like happy. I always kind of think you see a lot of guys, every guy that I've ever seen has said that doesn't look happy.
You're right. Right. So, I'm trying. It's not working, man.
It's not working. I'm telling myself, but it's just not. I don't feel it.
Right.
And what happens when rites of passage disappear? Men still seek initiation, and it's just without structure. And I think you kind of see that now. And I was watching a lot of these walkouts for these kids, and you're seeing, especially the boys. I mean, the girls, some of them too are crazy, but the boys were doing things like throwing trash cans, computers, trying to fight with people, and you see this sense of like, okay, I guess you're trying to belong to this movement or whatever you think it is, but you don't even know what you're doing. Like if you ask them a question, what is the end goal of what you're doing? They don't know. What is the point of throwing your school computer on the floor and you can't even read? You know what I mean? Like and it's like also, and there was a lady, there was a news thing I saw where she's an older black lady, and she was on the football field, and she said it. So you can't tell this older lady that she doesn't know anything about oppression or anything like that, because she kind of, I think, talked a little bit about. She's like, I wish these kids, if they were gonna walk out and do this, that they did something better than just throw trash cans and their computers around, because it's like chaos for no reason. But you're trying to belong to a movement that you don't even understand. You can't answer simple questions when the news reporters are asking them. They don't know. They're just playing. They're just going along with it. And I know part of it is when you're a kid, because when you're a kid, you're stupid, so you just go along with whatever group is telling you to do. But it's also being a little bit. It's almost where they're not little enough where you don't think like, hey, you're going to be an adult in about a year or two. So it makes you kind of concerned about our future of America.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it does still come down to a sense of identity. I mean, you're constantly looking for, the answer to the question, who am I? What is my purpose? What is it that I do? And so I think there's always going to be some sort of rite of passage, whether it's actually a constructive sort of rite of passage that actually develops you into a functional individual. It gives you a sense of purpose, gives you kind of like a sense of right or wrong or whatever. If that is lacking in any way, you'll start to lean towards the rite of passage, which makes you basically just part of the mob. You're just following a crowd because there is actually identity in that. However, you're no longer an individual. You're part of the herd.
Yeah.
You're not carving your own path. You're just going with everybody else.
No, I agree. I even thought about that because I kept laughing when I was watching some of the footage as far as, because you had a lot of people that are always saying about, bootlickers and this and that. But I'm like, when you're looking at them, it's like, you're calling people bootlickers, but you're dressing up as like your soldiers. You know what I mean? You're dressing up as a soldier. Yeah. And there was even a video I saw where they were doing like checkpoints. like cops would do, like we would do for you. It's like, okay, you're basically saying you don't want authority where you're at for the government, but then you're creating your own.
They're forming authority.
Yeah. So it kind of contradicts, like, what are you doing? And it's like, basically it makes them, I don't even know if they realize it maybe, but it makes them just look like hypocrites. You're saying don't ID people, but you're IDing people going into your neighborhood. Like, so what, like, it really doesn't make any sense in that aspect.
Yeah, and when you get caught up in that mob wave, dude, I mean, you don't actually really have, like, you know, a real sort of organized chain of thought. It's just like, just be there, just to be there and disrupt, you know. And then, of course, you end up trying to throw a flashbang back at the cops and lose part of your hand, you know. So, yeah, it's purpose-driven individual drive that should be a rite of passage. Learning useful skills, learning how to subsist on your own, not being dependent on a group. Yes. However, you do want the right circle around you that actually supports you in that individual path. That's where, like, the change in the dynamic is. I mean, you want the people that are going to support you as an individual, but aren't just going to, like, wrap you up in, you know, some just mindless pursuit.
Well, we used to think of it like when we would do like room clearing stuff, there's like a stack, like you kind of stack up with each other. And so we used to think of where everyone was supposed to be. If someone went to a room and they were the number one man, and then you might end up the number one man as the last guy in, right? So it's almost being that interchangeable where you could work within a group, but you also know when you have to kind of lead. And that's what I think where most guys are trying to find that balance. Like, yes, you can be in a group and you can function in the group, but you also have to be able to be who you are outside of that group. Like, that group can't be your entire reason for living or your identity. And that's something that you have to make a choice to do. And I tell people that just from being in groups, from being in the military and being in law enforcement, I had to make a very conscious effort to not wholeheartedly just give, like, okay, I'm just going to fall into whatever they're telling me to do. And, you know, you have to, you can be proud of it without being so wrapped up in it that you can't see yourself without it. And I think a lot of people have trouble with that. And I tell people, like, you know, you have to, it does take effort. You know, it was a couple years before I stopped being a cop where I was already thinking about not being a cop. It was when being in the military, I used to like, you know, all the camaraderie and brotherhood, but I used to also be like, not let myself get caught up in, you know, we're singing crazy cadences, you know, like, you know, make the green grass grow, blood makes the green. And you have to take it for what it is. You can't be like, yeah, I'm living and dying this shit.
Right.
Like, you kind of have to, like, really kind of have to find the balance in that.
Right. Well, so the ability to adapt and improvise is a personal aspect, but it also has to fit into working as a team.
Do you think bad decisions are often men trying to feel alive or useful again?
Again, it's trying to find a sense of purpose, you know. However, a lot of times it ends up being trying to find a sense of purpose without any guidance, you know. And the guidance usually comes from somebody who's, like, gone through it, you know, at least been there in some degree. It's like, you know, can say, hey, I can give you the benefit of my experience. What you do with it from there is on you. However, without any input at all, the bad decisions, you know, it just spring up because you're trying to figure it out.
And I used to, and one of the things I think is always interesting, where I used to tell guys, like, when I worked in the jail, I would see guys that I thought would have been good in either the military or in law enforcement, but they chose, like, a different path. Because this is what, for the younger kids that don't know this, if you don't like belonging to organizations like the military or cops or fire or any group that you think, because whatever, you think that they're bootlickers or whatever you want to call them, if you get sent to jail, guess what? You're going to fall into some kind of organizational structure. It's going to be, it's just going to be white, blacks, Mexicans, and it's not going to be a choice. It's going to be by force or by other means.
That's what I fought against when I was there.
Yeah.
And somehow I was able to carve my path through that, but it was a gauntlet.
Yeah. And that's what a lot of people don't realize. It's like there's always going to be some type of structure. And I think that's where you kind of said, it's like you have to be able to know how to maneuver. And I think that comes to having, like, respect, you know, when, like, guys, if you have, like, you don't have to be a pushover, and you don't also have to be a super aggressive, but you have to have a certain level of respect to kind of like you said, to kind of, maneuver and carve your way through certain organizations. Because if not, you're going to end up being victimized by these organizations. You know what I mean? So it's just one of those things where I think it's like, if you keep committing crimes, you're going to end up in some type of, some type of organization.
It's always going to be easier on you, man, if it's an organization that you choose rather than one you're forced into.
Yeah. Yep. Without purpose, men drift instead of advance. And one of the things that I was looking at, because I posted up the thing about Jelly Roll, and he had to say his stuff about, because he's kind of, I think not only just him, there's another group called the Suicide Boys, and I always kind of use their music and them, where they're kind of talking about God more. A lot of people are talking about God more, and I always say it's guys that have either gone through stuff, been in the military, had hard lives, been to jail, whatever. Like, you see a lot of, I want to say hard men, but guys that have been through some shit kind of now talking more about God, right? But one of the things I saw when I posted up his, and I thought this was kind of where, men have to have some kind of, I guess, self-awareness how they are with other men, was one of the first comments that I got from with him, and I don't know who it was just some random person that commented, was like, well, he's talking about Jesus, but what does he do behind closed doors? Like, and my response to things like that is like, who cares? Because none of us are perfect. Like, no one is like perfect. Right. And if your first response to see a guy talk about something and then to ultimately just look for something negative, it kind of says a lot about the person. First of all, it's because you're taking them what they're saying, which is positive, and you're looking immediately for the negative of it, and not realizing that everyone is not at the same space in life. I'm pretty sure there's times all of us, have been where we didn't do something right. Doesn't mean that's who you are right now. One of the tattoos I have is, I got it for that reason, because it says every saint was a sinner, or every sinner has a future, and every saint has a past. Like, no one is like at this perfect point in their life where they're always not doing things that are correctly. And so to me, it's like, okay, well, if they're sometimes, I don't know, sometimes I think sometimes you can do things correctly in that moment, even if you messed up at a lot of other parts of your life. Sometimes you're just meant to do something at a moment, and that's what, what I mean? That's just sometimes the way it plays out.
If you take it from a faith standpoint, sometimes God will speak through you, And so yeah, when somebody has a message of faith and strength and all that sort of stuff, and then you get the person on the sidelines, behind closed doors, all that sort of stuff. I mean, that's just dismissing, something that you could possibly take something out of. But maybe you're just not in the right place to receive that message. Yeah. And so you have to come up with something in your head to just try to throw it out, because it's like, oh, man, that's a tough pill to swallow for me right now. Yeah. I got to do a lot of work looking in the mirror, and examining my own worth in order to actually take the value out of this. I don't want to do that. I just want to tear you apart.
Yeah, I just want to tear you down because I don't.
So that's the easy route.
And I also think it's one of those things where and especially for any of the guys that listen, that are in law enforcement or any type of thing where you help people, you got to understand that people are going to tell you they're going to do things and not always follow through with them. But you can't just be negative. One of the conversation not too long ago I had where it's like, if you're in an organization and it's negative, the worst thing you can do is become negative, because all you do is become part of that organization. Like, you have to kind of, and it's hard, but you have to kind of stay your course without falling into all of that stuff like that. So even if someone else is telling you like, hey, they're bitching and complaining, you shouldn't join in the bitching and complaining. What you should do is continue to kind of hold your course and I'm going to say like posture, but kind of, kind of hold fast in that way, and kind of show them that you're not going to be swayed. And a lot of times you'll find guys that now they start swaying towards your direction more because they see that you're unfazed about what you're telling them. It's like, okay, if you want to suck and complain all the time, that's fine, but I'm not going to do that shit. You know what I mean? And people, I think, gravitate towards that. And that's what I kind of saw. A lot of it, I don't like when I see other Christians trying to tear down other Christians because they don't think they're holy enough or Jesus enough, when it's like all you have to go back is look at something like with the Bible with the disciples, and it's like, okay, none of them were perfect. So that's already tells you like no one is perfect. I'm not perfect. You're not perfect. No one watching this shit is perfect. So they need to get that shit out of their head. And if anything, they should be like, okay, they're doing a good thing right now. And that's what matters more than, me trying to like, well, remember when he was in 10th grade and he fucking, did something.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you can realize like, the truth about something and not, and still fall short of it, from time to time. And people have got to give you, at least some of that sort of leniency.
Yeah.
There was only one perfect man ever.
Yeah.
And you're not it. I'm not it. Miguel, you're not it. But
yeah, Miguel, you devil.
But yeah, I mean, all we can do is just try to be better.
And I saw a quote that I thought was good. It said, you have a problem with religious people, and it said Jesus did too. They crucified him.
Yeah, right.
And that's kind of to tell people, because it's like to understand when we talk about faith and we're bringing this stuff up for men, it's because we're trying to show different aspects that you need us to make yourself a complete person. Like going to the gym is part of it. Having a good stability of people that are around you that care about you. And also having faith and believing in something is another part of it. And with that, when you're missing something, it's like your foundation's not solid. You're going to be lacking something. There was a pyramid that they used to give us for, it was like crisis intervention training. And he used to say, it was like love, water, food, sex, and money. And it said, if you have food, if you have everything except love, right, you're gonna be craving love because you're having sex, money, everything else, but you don't have love. And if you have love but you don't have food, water, or sex, right, it makes you want. So you kind of want to have that foundation of your needs being met, so that way you can keep building on top of it. If not, you're searching for it. And I think that always just comes back to and when about not worshiping celebrity culture, because they're always putting in people's heads to like fame, money, that's all you need. And then but then when you see them talk or try to have any type of knowledge, a lot of it seems like where they're always like suffering through depression or something's going on with them in their life and their personal space. And it's kind of like, well, obviously that isn't the answer. Probably makes things easier. I'm pretty sure it makes things easier to be able to do those things, but it doesn't mean that your life is going to be set on something like, okay, I got fame, money, and I'm just good to go now.
I actually thought about that the other day. I mean, imagine the emptiness it actually must fill somebody with. Say you have all the money in the world. You could buy everything you could possibly want. And then you say, well, this has brought me nothing.
You're more lost.
This is not what I thought it was. I mean, I can have anything I want that I could buy with money, and fame and fortune, but I have nothing.
It's a guy. It's a song that just came out. It's not from the Suicide Boys, but I think they're on it. It's called. I like the title of it. It was called "I'm Wealthy, but I'm Still Worthless." Yeah. And it's kind of like that, and that has to be almost frustrating because I can't imagine. It's like if you have a big house, you're in this house, but you're not with anyone that loves you. You have all this money, but you're alone. And I think that's where for men and probably women too, where depression, things start kicking in because you realize that there's this big gap or this hole in you that cannot be filled because you've spent all your time pursuing this thing that never really was going to fulfill you anyways.
You're not satisfying your humanity.
And I think that goes back to what we always talk about, like acts of service and helping other people and things. That's where that fulfillment comes and kind of and finding like ultimately your purpose. Like, what am I here to do? And sometimes it may not be what you want to do.
Yeah. And doing the thankless jobs,
yep.
Even though you may catch the heat or whatever, you just know it's got to be done. You just do it.
Yeah, no, that was a lot of it today. Just wanted because I didn't want us to keep kind of like I know we always hit the gym thing hard about that, which it's still a key part of it. But I know with the rites of passage, I think it's important because there is no set rite of passage. Like you said, there's so many roads to go down. Like you kind of have to look for it. What is your rite of passage? I don't think it's just one thing. I think it's usually a culmination of things. I wish it was as easy as like, you see some of the movies where it's like, hey, go kill the mountain lion and come back with its head. And all of a sudden, the village is welcoming you back and you're a man now.
Yeah, right.
But it's not like that. There's a lot of, I think, and I also think it's because people don't get to see you all the time what you're doing. And sometimes you're going to be the only one that gets to see what you're doing. Like if, one of the things that I think was a big learning experience for me was when we used to go running in the morning and it was like super cold out. It'd be like 5, 6 in the morning. We're just running through the dark, and no one's clapping for us or cheering for us. So you kind of have to like internally just be like, know what you're doing it for, and that makes you start looking inside yourself more than outside for like validation. So you're just like, okay, sometimes I got to do this shit, and no one sees what we do. It used to be funny, that commercial used to say we do more before 8 a.m. before most people do all day.
Yeah.
And I remember one time we ran, did some other stuff, and being like, oh shit, we really did it.
Well, so yeah, I mean that's like what I since last week's show, with Steven. So now if I committed to coming in at like 5 in the morning, work out with Steve, and then do my regular workout at 9 a.m. And I'm like, you tell him, man, I got 2 workouts in before 10 a.m.
Yeah.
What did you do today?
Like, take that, Steve.
Yeah, right. So.
But I think, doing stuff like that, like you had told me the other day when your schedule was long like that, I think sometimes when you think you can't give any more, I think there's stuff to give. You know what I mean? You just sometimes think you can't, but sometimes you have to and it makes you feel, what is it? Go to bed. You go to bed tired, but you go to bed like, yeah, okay, I did all the shit that I had to do. It makes you sleep better.
Yeah, look what I accomplished.
Yeah. Hell yeah. But I think that we're going to wrap it up from there. I think that was a good way to end it. Always a shout out to our sponsors, the Gain Station. Dave said,
home of the Good Leader podcast.
Hell yeah. And then they're having, are you guys still doing that sale, or is it?
And we're having just a blowout sale, just getting rid of the stock that has just been sitting around forever.
Dave says just pay him cash. That's all he wants, cash money.
For $5, you can take the rest of it.
So yeah, make sure you follow us on YouTube, on Instagram, and on Spotify. I feel like Spotify is honestly kind of things works the best because you can watch the video or the podcast. I don't know. This is my preference. And that's it. Anything else for you, Dave, to say?
I think we're doing good, man. I look forward to this every week.
Maybe one day Brandon will join us. We're gonna start a shirt. We're gonna make a shirt that says "Where's Brandon?"
We'll have to like shoot him up with some sodium pentothal or something like that.
Drag him in here and lay him on the couch.
Right.
All right. That'll be it.